All right, we are live. I'm seeing a lot of friendly faces in the chat. Wow, a lot of folks that I haven't reconnected with in a long time. It is great to see everybody. We're gonna do our Defense Ventures program. Ask Me Anything today. Really excited to jump in and share more about what we've been up to in 2020. And then we're all pretty excited for 2021 to come for a number of reasons. But if you haven't met me before, welcome to the AMA. I'm Mike Slaw, founder and CEO of Shift. We are a San Francisco-based startup. We're focused on advancing the careers of both current and former members of the military. So I just want to take a quick second and share why we think that a career advancement company is really important. We believe it's important because what's fundamentally true is that the workforce and the technologies that enable it are just changing so fast. They're changing so rapidly. What's also true is that this pace of change, new technologies coming online, new adversaries that we're fighting, new capabilities within the military and in the community that it represents, the pace of change is not slowing down. It's only getting faster. And so in the future, as new technologies and new industries are invented nearly overnight, there's not going to be these traditional industry experts, right? There's not going to be people that have 10 plus years of experience with an emerging technology that's really important for our national security. What's exciting is that represents an opportunity for us, for military veterans, for active duty service members to be the experts. It's a huge opportunity to unlock for our national mission and our future careers if there are ways for us to get up to speed quickly. And that's what we're all about here at Shift. And so today we're talking about our Defense Ventures program, our innovation-focused upskilling initiative that we run with AFWorks, which is the innovation arm of the United States Air Force. All right, before we jump in to a couple more overview slides, all right, who's today's session for? We got a couple different programs we run at Shift. So if you're a current employee of the DoD who's interested in innovation, in emerging technology, and integrating the best investment and business and tech practices from the private sector back into the Department of Defense, this program is for you. If you're a veteran seeking a job, if you are somebody who's a service member who's transitioning from the military soon, I'd encourage you to go to our site, shift.org, look into some of our direct hire and career accelerator programs. We're going to be hosting more of these live streams soon, but just to be totally clear, Defense Ventures is an initiative for folks who want to bring emerging technologies and innovation back into the Department of Defense. Now, there's other offerings on our site for folks that are looking to accelerate their career in private sector opportunities. So before we jump into today's agenda, I'm going to bring my co-host up onto the screen, Chris McPherson. He's Shift's VP of Growth. I'll let him introduce himself quickly for the audience as well.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, everybody. Happy holidays. Thank you for joining us for our first LinkedIn Live event. It's been a long time in coming. We're excited to do this. We're looking forward to sharing more about the program, what Shift and AFWorks has really accomplished over the last year, and to take your questions. So, just while we're getting started and getting things in, one thing we'd love to do is hear from you. So, feel free to put in where you're dialing in from, location. I see Great Falls, Montana is in the house, so that's awesome. I love to be out there skiing right now, but throw your location in so we can see where everyone's coming from.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. All right, to orient ourselves on what we're going to cover on today's session, hoping to accomplish a few things today. First and foremost, what is the Defense Ventures program? We're going to share a little bit more about what the program is, how it came to be. Next, we're going to cover what happens during the program and how is it actually designed. So we'll spend a little bit of time talking about the actual experience. Third, why is it important and why we create it? Here's where we'll share a little bit about how you can also sell this program to your chain of command in order to participate. Then we're going to talk through how do I apply and work through how to do it, the nuts and bolts there. But to double tap on what Chris said, we want to hear your questions. And so with that, we're going to jump right in. Over to you, Chris.
So let's start with a quote. So I never considered myself creative, but participating in the fellowship gives you permission to see yourself as creative, an innovator, and someone who likes to solve problems. This is from Major Justin Poole. He is one of our alumni from last year. He was part of the first cohort. We have a few of those folks in the house as well. Forrest Underwood is in the chat. These are all people you can talk to about the program. But I think what this covers down is like one of the most important components of what this represents both to the Air Force and to us, which is this idea of what does this opportunity give you in the middle of your career? You know, for folks early in their mid-career, how can you step away from the bureaucracy, the way of the assumptions and the kinds of systems and processes that you've all become used to, and start being able to see the world differently, right? The Air Force and Secretary Roper has been kind enough to join us in multiple sessions to talk about this, but it's this idea of knowing that we need to be somewhere and that we're using tools and processes and methodologies that are from yesterday. And we need to jump into tomorrow. And one of the best ways to do that is to step out of our world and step into a new world that's solving problems in new and different ways. So the thing we want to talk about today is what happens when to Justin to have him talk about this quote, but then also some of the other stories that did that. So why did we create this program? And so this program has been around about, we're going into our maybe year and a half if we go back to the early days. But it really started from this idea that AFWorks and us had about creating an opportunity to step into some of the high-tech industry, the way investment in technology really has been done in the United States over the past 20 years, and to give some of our emerging innovators in the military this opportunity to understand how to drive technology development and how to apply emerging technologies and emerging platforms and systems in new and innovative ways. So we created this industry immersion program over the last 12 months. And in the last 12 months, I think Mike and I and Forrest and everyone who's been a part of this, including I see Jake Chapman, one of our hosts, is in the house. Sarah Solomon is in the house, and that's fantastic. But what this has really turned into is this idea of thinking about how to take emerging innovators, to bring them into a cohort experience, to give them opportunities to learn and think differently, and then to apply and experience a new way of approaching problems through our immersion programs with venture capital and tech startups, and then bring that back to the military. And so I do think there is a couple really interesting points about what goes on behind the scenes of this that we'll get into, but one of the biggest drivers is that the mission that we're trying to solve is the Department of Defense mission. When you come and join this program, you are a group of 25 who's really interested in not only advancing their career, but advancing their career in the service of helping the Defense Department solve new and innovative problems. You're with a group of people who are trying to think about the things they can bring back to the military to really make all the jobs and the missions that you do more successful, better, and more efficient in different ways. And so this program really does four basic things, right? This is about strengthening your leadership skills and industry knowledge. In many ways, it's about creating fluency in the technologies that not only tech companies are using in their day-to-day lives, right? So this goes all the way down to Slack, Google Slides, stepping away from PowerPoint, different kinds of collaboration technologies, but also the way that they think about artificial intelligence, the way they think about the different kinds of cybersecurity companies, the way they think about new ways of applying autonomous systems in in different industries and sectors. This is also about advancing your career potential. One of the reasons AFWorks is really invested in this program and partnering with us to do this is to really support what innovation looks like in the military and to understand how to, empower the service members to really drive that forward at the base and unit level. Doing things like what Justin is doing at Travis Air Force Base about driving innovation as close down to the mission as possible to really create change. Thirdly, this is about learning about tech and venture capital, right? This is about thinking about how technology investment is driven. Who are those people? What do they do? What's the difference between the science and the tech and the art, of that investment? And then taking all of that back and bringing it back to your home units, bringing it back to the Defense Department, bringing it back to AFWorks to really come up with new ways to solve problems, both at the grassroots level and then also at the organizational level.
And I'll complement that as well. Chris talked a little bit about this cohort experience. And so you see these 4 main outputs that we see the fellows from the year 1 program accomplishing. But I think if you asked any of them, if you look at the AFVentures hashtag on LinkedIn, and you can see this outpouring of stories of folks that have got to experience and learn about tech and venture capital, they're doing it at network speed. And what I mean by that is that they are surrounded by a cohort of peers that's incredibly diverse. We've had folks participate in the program from the ranks of E5 through 06, folks from all 4 services, folks from all different occupational codes as well, acquisitions professionals, special operations, finance officers. When you are surrounded by a group of people that is super diverse, but has the same goals, and in this case, the same goal is to bring innovation back to DoD, you learn faster and you're sped up by your peers. The old adage of iron sharpening iron, it totally makes sense. And so a critical component of this program is that we are surrounding people with groups of people who are just like them, but they are from all over the world, they're from all over the military, and this whole program is presented virtually. Thanks for indulging me there, Chris. Let's jump into some of the nuts and bolts of the program.
Yeah, so let's drill down and talk about what the experience actually is like. It's an 8-week program. 6 of those weeks are full time. The thing that that I think Mike and I are probably, COVID has put a lot of challenges on all sorts of things this year. But one thing that I think we're grateful for is the way it drove us to some of our virtual engagements and how we've thought about the curriculum that goes into this program, because it's allowed us to really approach this fellowship from 2 perspectives. And it's really, actually, let me step back. It's 3 perspectives. So 3 things go on when you join this. There is a learning by doing component that happens. And this is this host experience where you actually partner with high-tech companies and venture capital firms. There's this learning from others experience where there are books we read and we have guest lectures come in that really talk about some of the emerging best-in-class thinking about ethics, design, different kinds of investment methodologies, how certain defense contractors and dual-use investors think about developing technology. And then there's this learning with others component, this cohort experience. And intuitively, I think for Shift, which is really about developing helping our military talent develop their careers, this is a really important thing that sometimes doesn't happen when you transition into civilian life, because you spend most of your career in the military working with a team of people to solve a problem. And then you go out and you transition and you're applying for jobs by yourself. One of the things we felt very strongly about is that experience doesn't need to be individual. When you're going through a life event, and all of you know this, you think about the help that you have and the support you get both from your family, from your community, and how fast that accelerates this program, whatever it is you're doing. And what we've seen in the last year is just how powerful that is. The cohorts have enduring relationships, not only with each other inside of that, but across the group as the alumni begin to form. There is this idea of this curriculum that I do want to touch on, which I think is cool and exciting. And Mike and I are very, very proud of what that kind of turns into, because we've gotten some props in terms of how this is really what an executive MBA program could look like in today's world. And it really has these 6 components. This idea of getting a familiarity with startups and entrepreneurships. The Secretary Roper in the Defense Department is very interested in non-traditional defense contractors, right? And all that means is companies that have never worked with DoD before. A lot of them are very small. Startups are very small. Understanding how a small organization works with a large million-person organization is very important in this ecosystem. But also, like, what happens? What does hiring look like? What does product design look like? How does a go-to-market strategy work? What does being scrappy and gritty mean? And so we expose a lot of our fellows to CEOs and founders that can talk about that journey, about how they are actually creating innovative products and services. We also have foundations of venture capital curriculum, which really focus on giving our fellows the language of what does it mean to be in the VC world? What does investment look like at early and seed stage and Series A, B, C companies? If you're Andreessen Horowitz, which is a multi-100-person organization, or Alpha Bridge Ventures, which is a handful of really smart-driven people, the way they think about their investment theses are different. And being able to be among a group of people who are having those experiences all at the same time, and the artifacts that they go through, and a market strategy, and what due diligence looks like, and how they actually think about vetting both the product and the team, gives you really exposure to how investment decisions are made. And then there's this idea of creativity and innovation, which goes back to Justin's idea of how do you actually use this experience to think about all the things you might not normally see, to really think about this experience from being almost a child's mind, and understanding that everything that's going on around you, even if it's new and unfamiliar, is an opportunity to really understand why, and to ask a question why, and to give yourself permission to just ask why for a month and a half of some incredible experts in the world. And then there's this idea of what does it mean for the DoD to work with the tech industry? And in a lot of sense, Mike and I designed this program to really have the fellows be the evangelists. They are the explorers going into a lot of these companies who have not had Defense Department relationships before, and giving them an awareness both of what does it mean to be in the military, but also what does a mission, and what is the mission of the military, and what kind of problems they're solving. And then finally, there's this component which I think is appreciated by many, but just what does networking mean in the private sector? Both so as you're going through these relationships, you have a LinkedIn profile, you can start talking about your experience in a way that translates to other people so they can understand where you're coming from, and both engage with you and develop professional relationships that last a long time.
All right, so I got to touch on a couple of these, Chris, because this slide, it encapsulates so much of what Shift is. We value people who value learning. And when we think about the actual experience of the fellowship, our fellows are placed into just a diverse and a variety of environments. They're learning by doing. They're effectively, after a 2-week pre-work and learning session with Shift, they're dropped into a full-time immersion for 6 weeks at a technology company or a venture capital firm. And when Chris is talking about, some of the fellows are embedded into venture capital firms with 10 billion plus assets under management that they're investing in hundreds of the most emerging technology companies. And some of these firms are 4 people sitting around the table, and they're just getting started in their journey of investing in technology companies. That experience is totally different. But what we've heard is almost like stunning, the type of experiences that our fellows get Very, very different, even more immersive than a typical MBA internship. We have heard from fellows that are sitting around the deal operations team when founders from other technology companies are coming to pitch these investment partners. They're sitting in the actual pitch discussions. They are not just a fly on the wall. They're getting asked from the general partnership, hey, what do you think about that deal? What's your perspective on it? And so these different experiences vary widely from each other. Move that to learning with others. That's the magic of the cohort experience, because some of the fellows are at Andreessen Horowitz, some of them are at AlphaBridge, some of them are at technology companies like Expanse or Anduril. When we bring people back together for group discussions, that's when this knowledge transfer takes place in these community platforms, when fellows present their learnings back to the group. And so not only do you get this very deep dive into the host partner where you're immersed with, it's almost like you get to get an immersion into 20 other different environments at the same time as well. Then you take that to learning from others. It's no secret that there's just a tremendous amount of DoD innovation network efforts and networks that are afoot right now. So we're bringing in folks from Ensign and DIU and ArcWorks, MarineWorks, Army Futures Command. Over the course of 6 weeks, we typically see 40 to 50 live events that folks on our team like Forrest Underwood put together and host and convene these networks of people, so that not only are you getting an immersion to technology in the VC world, but the whole DoD innovation ecosystem that exists as well. All right, Chris, moving back on to the host experience. Back over to you.
Sure. And so, we want to spend a little bit talking about what happens while you're embedded with a tech company, venture capital company, one of our partners. Over the last year, we've had 42 corporations in the United States participate. About most of them venture capital firms, but also startup tech companies and incubators like Atomic, based in San Francisco, and Expo Labs, also based in San Francisco. And so what we want to take a couple of minutes just to talk about what happens, because it's a very different, it's early on and every company's experience is different, but it's really what you make of it. And part of that comes into a couple different ways. And so I want to talk, just highlight one of our most favorite partners and hosts, a company called Expanse, which was very interesting because they've hosted a number of fellows this year. But the last group were actually part of an acquisition when Expanse was acquired by Palo Alto Networks, and the person, one of our major partners at Expanse, Joe Lynn, had this quote, right, talking about, we pride ourselves on having an exceptionally deep understanding of DoD cyber weapons, but our fellows have been game changers for us. For their capstone projects, they leveraged our tech and groundbreaking analysis around the Air Force's internet attack surface and built new use cases, operating concepts, and deployment models in support of AF cyber ops. The experience that the fellows have can be wide and varied. A couple things happen. So at one level, what we ask our hosts to do is to really bring the fellows into the day-to-day operations of the firm. At some of the startup companies, they literally go through the new employee onboarding program. When JetBlue participated earlier this year, they flew our fellow around the country to visit different parts of the firm. This was back before COVID. Some of the firms bring you into deal flow meetings on the VC side, and you go into the meetings and you're part of the pitches that the companies are pitching to the venture capital firms. It really takes its own form, but the diversity of those experiences together with the other 24 members of your cohort is really where some of that richness happens, because you can see the difference between what a tech company is doing and how they leverage and integrate people versus how some of the early stage seed investment firms are doing that.
Chris, we have one question come in. I want to just pause really quick on this. So I'm an active duty Marine E9. How can I get the Marines around me involved in this and build awareness? What comes to mind there?
So we would love more enlisted applicants. One of our goal, we've had a handful of them come in. One of our most recent enlisted fellows, guy named Master Sergeant Pitcher. Sergeant Pitcher is going to have an article in the National Contracting Management Agency's yearly contracting magazine, but the having more enlisted representation in the cohorts are, I think, a critical goal for us. When you were talking about the Marines, there's a couple of things we could do. One is reach out to your Marine alumni. Sharon Rollins, most recent alumni, was in our cyber program, and having them, also Rob Wallace was another Marine participating in the cyber cohort, in one of the venture capital cohorts, having them come in. I think what they can do is help build some of that awareness with the Marines, because how they've actually talked about the program with each other, and they can share some of those use cases to really get your commander support for doing that. I think also what we'll do after is post a link to a one-pager that we have that you can share among your commands. Applying for the program and putting your foot in gives us the ability to understand also what units are really interested in engaging in those people, so we can reach out and kind of help and figure out paths forward.
Much appreciated, Chris. Let's keep rolling to the benefits of the program.
Yeah. So, there's a couple. This part I'm going to talk about it just from the perspective of the fellows and what we really hope to gain from this. And there are 4 big buckets. So this is about relationships. You'll see as you go through this experience that one of the goals we really wanted to have was relationships at the human level. One of our, I think, fundamental design principles for Shift is always talking about the human, either the veteran or the military service member and their experience. What we intend to do from these programs is not only to give you the relationships of your like-minded service members who are trying to solve these problems, but also to really build enduring relationships with these companies, with their portfolio companies, and with your cohort. Relationships that what we've seen endure long beyond your actual 6-week immersion program with them. The other benefit is really gaining firsthand experience from industry experts. We work very hard on our events program and our curriculum to really have some of the best-in-class people who are thinking about AI, thinking about design, product development, come in and spend an hour. And we don't put a lot of, our engagement sessions aren't rocket science. It's really about giving some pre-work so you can get a threshold level understanding of how to think about this, having these speakers come in and give a short presentation, but really this is about asking them questions, asking them to get a sense of how they're thinking about things, and you being able to engage with them in a conversation to get their insights. It's also about solving hard problems. What we mean by that is a lot of these technologies that developed in Silicon Valley aren't developed for military use cases. They're developed for private sector industries. I think one of the things you would find out by going through this program is that the Department of Defense and the federal government is not necessarily the first customer that comes in mind when a lot of these companies are starting their businesses. There are some legacy kind of anachronistic ideas about that being a cumbersome, difficult process that this program is starting to help bring down. But at the same time, a lot of them don't have the military experience that you do with your missions, and they can find things. You can see things and see applications for their technology systems, for their products and their services that they might not ever occur to them. And surfacing that both for you to say, this is where we can go to solve this problem, and for them to say, you might have a very viable market in the federal and government and the Defense Department by just taking this and framing it in a different way can be extremely not only powerful to helping the country solve problems, but profitable for a lot of these companies who are really in it to create value and be successful businesses. And then finally, this is about bringing innovation back to the DoD. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more when we talk about applying for the program. But this is a twofold thing. This is really about bringing innovators back to the DoD as well as innovation. Innovation doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens at a human level. It happens when people decide to do three things, right? See the world differently, to overcome their fears of people pushing back on the kinds of assumptions and processes and products that people have come to be comfortable with, and then figuring out a way to basically get the people around you to adopt new behaviors. And what we're trying to do is really start that momentum, both for AFWorks and for all of you, to have those sparks that you can bring back either with a new idea, a new way of thinking about a problem, a new way of solving about a problem, or even a new way of behaving around each other and thinking about new solutions. That's one of the, if not one of the main goals. But for you, it's one of the things to think about when you go back home to your units. And to be honest, there's going to be lots of things in this that Mike and I and Forrest and everyone else don't know yet, because it is still year one. We only have, our most recent group just went back to their home units 7 days ago, and we're gonna see what happens, because a few of these folks are gonna spark something that could, I believe very sincerely, is gonna change the mission of the Department of Defense and the way they solve problems.
Well, I got goosebumps, Chris, when you're talking about the service members who are going back to their home units, and they describe themselves as basically a different person.
Mm-hmm.
It's really special that you can go from zero to something new in 8 weeks, but that's real.
Yeah.
And don't take our word for it. There we go. That's right. If don't take our word for it, check out the AF Ventures hashtag. Search for that on LinkedIn. Anybody who's posting about their experience, reach out to them. Our alums. Not only are you going back to your unit a different person, but you just went through an experience with a group of other people, and you were probably onboarded by a different group of people that just went through that experience before you. Learning at network speed. And we can't even, when Chris says we don't know what's going to happen, we don't know what's going to change, part of that is a little bit of uncertainty, but part of it represents this tremendous opportunity that we don't know what this will look like when there have been 50 cohorts of Defense Ventures fellows who have participated in these programs 4 years into the future. That's what gives us goosebumps, and that's why we do this on our side. That's why it's really exciting.
If you want to go back one slide, Mike, we can pause, because I think we have some good questions that tie into that. So Catherine, you asked a question about the in-person versus virtual, and I think this is one of those examples of we don't know what it turns into. So just to share a little bit of a story, the first cohort was an incredible experience. Forrest was there, Bobby Carbondale was there, I'm seeing Jake Chapman was all there, and they had this incredible in-person experience of being
Sarah, Barbara,
David.
Sorry.
And we were really excited. And then COVID really happened. And a couple things, I do want to call out a couple things happened, which was we had a group of military innovators who had been connected to the technology ecosystem that AFWorks could really draw on for the COVID response. And a lot of them leaned into both the AFWorks and some of the White House efforts. You can talk to Forrest about what happened in those sessions, but they were able to immediately apply both the relationships and the knowledge they had to help think about the DoD response to COVID. When we had to pause the fellowships just for a little bit as we figured out what there was no one could move on bases. Everyone was trying to figure out how to work from home. And when we went back to virtual, we really started to create that curriculum that we talked about earlier. But honestly, as a risk mitigation strategy, because we weren't sure what happens when you could just imagine, like, going to a new company, but virtually coming in. We were concerned that people wouldn't be included into meetings as easily as they would be if they were there, right? Out of sight, out of mind. And we had preparation material going on, but it wasn't like a thing that happened consistently throughout the program. And so along with Forrest's help, we really started to drive these different vectors: startups, entrepreneurship, creativity, foundations of venture capital, like the history of the DoD relationship and how acquisitions work. And what that did a couple things. One, it brought the cohort experience together. It's like to the effect that Mike and I have not seen a degradation of any part of this program for the switch to virtual. We're also
better.
Yeah, and also we're going to keep part of this program virtual forever. I think as long as we do it, there are very practical reasons. We had people come in from Turkey. We had folks who couldn't otherwise participate because of, family situations, and they just couldn't get away to be TDY for 6 weeks. There's also some units that probably couldn't fit the bill to send one of their members TDY to San Francisco or New York or San Antonio. So the virtual cohorts have been just as powerful and just as meaningful. Another question I think we had from this, let me just kind of look through on this part, which was map of the DoD Innovation Enterprise. Yeah, I think this is a good thing to talk about. There probably is never going to be a map of the DoD Innovation Enterprise. And the easy way to solve this problem as a participant in the fellow is to just presume that you're the alien making first contact, and you are the ambassador and the teacher. You're going into a lot of these firms. They don't see a difference between the services and the Defense Department, or the Defense Department and the US government. It's all the same thing to them. And you trying to translate all of that, both for your benefit and for their benefit, is going to take a lifetime if you could ever do that. And so what we advise our fellows to do is to really just be themselves, to have that personal experience, and you share your mission, you share your integrity, you show them what that means. And that drives a lot of very compelling conversations. What we do on the back end is bring in folks from DIU, bring in folks from like the Air Force Rapid Acquisition and Fielding Office, bring in AFWorks to talk about what some of that innovation value chain looks like and how you can fit into it, but also how you can help orient people to that. And then I think what's even more important, but also been understated, how you can help them think about the better ways to engage businesses, right? To be like, this is too overly complicated. This is not solved. This part is confusing. We had one of our contracting officers, they were advising one of the firms about a cyber contract, and they were getting confused. And so, that fellow's takeaway was like, well, if I'm a contracting officer with an unlimited warrant and I'm getting confused in the contracting process as these companies are going through, like, maybe there's a couple things we need to relook. Those things are tremendously important.
All right, Chris, I'm going to move us over to this slide right here, which just shows our upcoming sessions for next year in 2021. We can jump into a little bit of rapid fire Q&A and anything that you or I may have missed.
Mm-hmm.
I did see a good question come in. I know that there was a question from the group on, hey, if we're on the corporate side, or we've already transitioned from the military, we want to bring the Defense Ventures program into our company. It's free for companies to participate, to host Defense Ventures fellows. Of course, companies have to align to one of the subject areas that we're hoping to immerse people in our 2021 programs: cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, technology startups, and venture capital firms. You can shoot us an email at partners@shift.org, and we will have a conversation with you as to whether it makes sense to align to the 2021 programs. Because the program's virtual, I think we had hosts participate in 8 different locations as of the last cohort. VC firms in, of course, the San Francisco Bay Area, New York City, Austin, Washington, D.C., Boston. I'm probably missing a few on my side there, Chris. But
Georgia, Ann Arbor,
that's right.
Los Angeles, San Antonio, DC, New York. Yeah, it's given us a tremendous way to engage different and new metropolitan areas that I think is incredibly powerful.
The only other thing to add there is that, of course, so shoot us an email if you do want to host fellows at your company or start a conversation. And then we're going to jump into some of these rapid fire questions here pretty soon. And I can tee those up for you, Chris, if you want. But maybe it'd be helpful to just talk through with the group tactically how to apply and how to think about sessions next year. Yep. Like super focused on filling up and running our application process for session 1.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I think that's a great idea. So next year we have 4 sessions, and each session is going to have 2 cohorts of fellows. And right now, the fellows, some of the majority of our cohorts are going to be focused on venture capital, but we're also going to have a couple focused on cyber and AI. We launched cyber at the end of this year, and it went well, and we're going to continue to develop that and also integrate some more AI-focused companies. So very tactfully, right now, applications are open for session 1. We have 2 cohorts focused on venture capital and investment. You will be embedded with venture capital partners, and as well as our technology startups, a lot of their portfolio companies, for 8 weeks. So the 2 weeks starting February 1st is going to be part-time. And then the second week of February, it's a 6-week virtual full-time immersion until the end of March. What we're most interested today is driving applications to that, just because with the holidays and the timeline, we want to make sure we have great participants to kick off the new year. And then in January, we're going to open up the other 3 sessions. So session 2, which kicks off in late March, session 3, which kicks off end of August, and session 4, which kicks off at the end of the year in early October. If I can talk very quickly about what goes into the application and who can apply. And so this is open to any employee of the Department of Defense right now. This is part of the this is a partnership with AF Ventures. It's going to be, you will be the AF Ventures fellows to the Defense Ventures program. And that, and right now, it'd probably be mostly the Air Force, but there's also going to be other services involved. What we're looking for is a couple of things. So one is we strongly prefer that everyone has at least 3 years of professional experience. That doesn't have to only be in the military. We've made exceptions to that, but we haven't made a lot. And so most of that means, what that means is you have demonstrated an ability to perform in professional environments. That's one of our minimum criteria. You also have to be on order. So if you're in reserve in the National Guard, your commander needs to make sure you're on orders and you're paid by the Department of Defense while that's happening. For the application, there's a couple things. So one is you'll need a resume to submit to us. We'll have 5 essay questions of 500 words or less. Things about why are you interested? What kind of value do you expect to bring? How will this impact your career and your career goals? Questions like that. Or for the cyber, really focused on what are some of those underlying assumptions in cyber that you think need to be questioned and have new ways of solving problems. So there's essay questions. There is also some references to provide. in that, as well as your last 2 performance evaluations. And so that represents the application packet, which you can apply. It should take, if you have everything all put together, should only take about less than an hour to pull together and do some of those things and put it through on our website, shift.org/DVP.
All right, Chris, some rapid fire ones. Let's kick it over to you. So, are the session days firm or there's some flexibility?
So the session days right now are firm. They are, we need this for our corporate partners so they can plan and make sure that they're in the office when you come in. A lot of these were determined alongside just kind of the op tempo, trying to find the optimal op tempo between many of your all's kind of orders, as well as the op tempo of our corporate partners. When they can, venture capital firms are a unique kind of company, and they do have different kinds of things happen at different parts of the year. And so they tend to not be around very often in the summer and also in December. And so we want to be able to maximize the amount of time that you can spend with them. And that's part of the reason for the kind of semester looking design that you see here.
Perfect. All right, Chris, I'm gonna let you get a drink of water or something and answer a couple of these. All right, so the cohorts, how large are they typically? Typically 25 people, 20 to 25 people from very diverse backgrounds, officers, enlisted, National Guard, Reserve, active duty, across all sorts of different occupational specialties and codes within the military. What's interesting is in these sessions, we are running 2 cohorts per session next year. And so that will be 2 cohorts of 25 people who are embedding at technology firms and venture capital firms in session 1. Is it possible to apply for a session after the initial February-March one? It will be, just not yet. We are very focused on getting that program complete, getting applications processed. And so in early 2021, we'll open up enrollment for the additional 3 sessions, sessions 2 through 4 that we're running in 2021. Chris, here's one for you. All right, so how does the pairing work? Little to no cyber background, but may bring value to a different industry. How does it work?
Yeah, so the pairing works in a few ways. So one is we need to know the companies, the hosts who are participating, and the fellows that are participating. And part of our contract with AFWorks was to really start to develop our proprietary technology that Shift uses for helping transitioning veterans really translate their skills and experiences to employers. That's one of the reasons Mike started his company. And one of the things that we brought to AFWorks was that development of technology and how we could apply it in this sense. And so the matching works in us right now. We take all of the existing members and then all of the existing partners, and we have a really it matches based on a few things. Things that we see in your resume in terms of preferences, things we see in technical fluencies. Obviously, some of the places require different kinds of capabilities, and so we try to filter for that. And then we try to base it based on, I think interest alignment too is a really important thing. And, Jake and Forrest can talk about that. Having people who care about the kinds of efforts and the focus areas that you're trying to work on. Part of the reason is you might work with companies that have nothing to do with the Defense Department. That doesn't mean that the things you can't learn aren't valuable. It also could mean that they might have products and services that might be completely applicable that they just haven't thought of yet. And so that thing happens usually about a month to a few weeks before you join. So you're accepted into the program, and then a few weeks later, you're matched with a firm. One of the things we're trying to improve this year with, I think, a lot of the future sessions is doing that matching much earlier. So you actually have a time to start to develop a more meaningful relationship with your host. So when you step in on day 1, you're just that much more impactful.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So I see a bunch of other comments coming in related to different military units and parts of the Department of Defense. Do you see the program expanding to SOFWorks? The partnership with SOCOM and the industry seems to be a natural fit for Shift. Can you talk about from Colin? Yeah. Discuss OSD's effort to broaden the opportunity for 12 months. Talk about other military units, Chris, and how you think about expanding the timeline of some of the conversations that are in flight. And how do we do that? How do we get to that point?
Yeah. So we love talking business, and part of the, there's two things that I think we're excited about. One is that the last year's efforts, when we were calling everything the App Ventures Fellowship, was really a prototype. It was about taking a concept and proving that it's a worthwhile, valuable experience to develop. And our new contract, our new partnership with AFWorks is really about taking what we did this year and developing a pipeline of emerging innovators over the next 4 years. Our primary focus this year is about making that program reliable, repeatable, and excellent, just consistently. Every fellow comes through having the alumni program being a very strong network of innovation, and also creating this community of belonging. And I think Forrest and the other folks can talk to that. Like, this is not us defining an ecosystem. This is very much about us basically enabling some of the design principles of a habitat and a community that's going to shape and determine its path forward, both with AFWorks, who's very engaged on how to utilize this capability, but also with your commands. While we're doing that, it's telling us so much about different opportunities and ways that we can do this, how we could develop program manager pipelines, how we can really create more effective contracting officers, how we can think about the different ways that the services might want to think about innovation opportunities like this. So to go back with the Marines and AFWorks and how OSD can solve this problem, I think the ways is we're going to continue learning from this program, and then we're going to start innovating in different ways to do that. We feel very comfortable that this 6-week immersion gives the fellows basically the relationships and the exposure to new technologies that they need to enable change. We might determine that longer fellowships are required to really develop proficiency in a specific function or industry, right? And so there is research to support how long it would take to really understand, for example, marketing at a technology firm, or even understanding a core industry by thinking about the problems they solve. And I think that's where we're excited to explore things like the OSD program with Colin about what would a much longer fellowship look like, or as we've talked about, what would a repeated fellowship, if you start thinking about this as a series of rotations that you do, both with AFWorks, across the different services. And then there's really cool things, I think, for us that we get excited about when you think about organizations like SOFWorks, which is how can we start to use this as a horizon scanning ability, where you're actually not having to, you're decentralizing and creating a network effect, a radar system of emerging technology that your individual service members are serving as the pings, and they're returning those questions because, speaking from someone who spent half of their career in the Defense Department, that feedback loop of understanding what the operator is going through and then trying to solve the requirement and build a capability to do that needs to be tightened. Right. And having that operator experience with the solution and the prototyping and the learning happen as fast as possible is one of the things we're most excited to share. And so building this capability for us, we want to bring this capability to each service. So the Space Force has their own innovation upskilling program and the Marines have their own. It's going to look different. It's going to feel different. They're going to use it to develop talent and human capital in different ways. And we're really excited to have those conversations.
Exciting, Chris. All right, so we're going to end this thing in 5 minutes exactly with some military precision, but I'll make sure we get to a couple other questions in just a second, and we'll make sure that we follow up with everybody in the comments as well. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, Mike Slaw, Slagh, Chris McPherson. We would be delighted to connect with you and answer any individual follow-ups that come in. But again, I'm just going to reiterate really quickly some of the comments at the beginning. If you didn't catch those, this will be recorded. You're going to be able to scroll back in time and take a look at it. But we're talking about the Defense Ventures program. This is for folks who are not looking for maybe their next civilian career, or they're a veteran that's transitioned. This is for folks that are looking to bring the best emerging technologies into the Department of Defense, to bring the best innovative practices and procedures and business principles into their military units and major commands. This is about advancing the careers of current members of the U.S. Department of Defense. And with that, you can't talk about, current members of the Department of Defense without talking about reserve and guard organizations, which I think have just an incredible amount of untapped potential to apply to the national mission going forward. We are going to see the reserve and guard communities do amazing things because people want to be able to continue to have this vehicle to affect change and create impact towards the national mission. So, Chris, I'll pose this to you. Do reserve and guard organizations have funding already set aside? Doug asks for the program, or can they get access to additional funding to sponsor someone?
That's a great question. I know our AFWorks partners are trying to answer that with some definity, but I think the two things would happen is we'd have to direct some of those questions to AFWorks. I know they're working to try to get better fidelity on how to answer that. I also think to the extent possible, for those folks who know people at the National Guard Bureau and the Reserve Commands, to make sure that they're aware of this and that planning to have this as part of your, as your training program while you're during your duty hours is important. Figuring out ways to allocate some of this so you can have that experience. Everything Mike says is true. This is about diversity of thought, diversity of body, diversity of experience. And, the only way you can have innovation is by having multiple people give ideas about how to the best ideas to solve the same problems. There's more than one right answer. There are wrong answers, but there's always more than one right answer. And we want as many different kinds of experiences as possible. When you think about your application, think about those differences. If you are someone who codes on their weekends and you have a GitHub repository, put it in. If you were like Sarah Solomon, who's maybe one of the few experts in the Department of Defense on biometrics, even if that has nothing to do with your job, if you did a PhD or master's in biometrics, let us know. There are developing the fluencies of innovation is going to be very important for the Air Force. They are thinking very hard about how to identify and support that. And I know Bobby Carbondale down at ArcWorks is thinking about that same thing too. He wants to he has a Rolodex that he's going to want where he can call anyone up to solve a problem when he gets that thing comes across his desk. And this is part of the way we can start building that of what is that cacophony of interests and affinity and technical fluencies and motivation, right? Entrepreneurship's around creating value from limited resources. Show us how you've done that. And then we're going to be able to give you the opportunity to connect with a group of people who can really support each other for the rest of their career.
Chris, I think that sums it up nicely. I think that we are going to end the live session on that today. But folks, thank you so much for joining us. This is a very special time in the history of Shift and the company that we've built for the last 4 years. It's an incredibly exciting time, furthermore, for the Department of Defense and the folks who want to get out on the fringe and understand the emerging technologies that are going to help us win as a nation. I'll say it again. We at Shift value people who value learning. If you're out there and you're out at some part of the DoD where the government could buy the most land for the least amount of money, and you're looking for your people, Trust me. Look at the AF Ventures hashtag on LinkedIn. Do not take our word for it. If you are out there and you're looking for your people and you're looking for a way to connect to a community platform that allows you to move at network speed and move your unit forward, this is the program for you. But you only got 10 days to apply for the February cohorts. We're going to open up applications for the cohorts that follow February after this. I am so proud of the work that our team has done over the past year and a half, putting this into the universe in partnership with AFWorks. And now that we start to see it expanding to other services and other components of the Department of Defense, very exciting time. Thank you very much, Chris. I literally could not have done this without you, man. You're an expert. I really appreciate that and all the work that you've done to put this program into the world as well. I said we're going to end it with military precision. I lied. Final thoughts over to you, Chris, and we'll end it up.
No, thank you, Mike. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our fellows. They really, in a certain sense, they are our company's product. So to the extent you can reach out, many of them are in our chat. I'm so grateful for, demonstrating what this could be. And the thing that makes it easy for Mike and I is the hard work they put into this. All we have to do is figure out how to make it easier so the people after them and they can actually achieve more and greater things. And so, at the end of the day, the thing I'm grateful for is being part of a company that's working towards doing that. We can only do this if you lean in and raise your hand, and that's what we want. You don't need to be intimidated by not having a technical fluency. Do not be intimidated by not knowing what venture capital works. Don't be intimidated if you don't have a traditional educational background. We want those people. If you're about making stuff happen, come and apply, and we want to give you an opportunity to do that.
All right, folks. Happy holidays. Our very best at Shift to you and yours. We are signing off right now. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.
Bye.